Welcome everybody. It's 3:10. We'll go ahead and get started with our candidate forum. I will announce the order. So just good afternoon everybody. Welcome. How's everybody doing today? All right. Michael's ready. Everybody enjoying the weather today? Great. Welcome to the District 8 Community Roundtable Forum. Who is a member of the District 8 Community Roundtable? Raise your hand. All right. Great. And who's a steering committee member of the District 8 Community Roundtable, right? We have Derek Grasty, our vice president. We have Marilyn Leonard, our secretary. Sherry Gilmore, our director of communications. We have Bert Smith, our member at large. Am I missing anybody? We have Robert Reese, Ravi, our member at large. We have Sandy and Robert from the Land Use Committee. So my name is Jeremy Burrows. I'm the president of the District 8 Community Roundtable. We meet the first Thursday of the month over at the Village Square Library that way. The first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. We have a lot of great topics and issues that we talk about. Our next meeting will be covering the census. We'll also have some representatives from the League of Women Voters who will be talking about a couple of the ballot measures that we'll see on the ballot for the March elections. So thank you for joining our candidate forum today. We'll start with the state Senate race. So for the order of seating, we did choose at random. So all the way to the left, we'll have Tim Gildersleeve. Next to him on the right will be Dave Cortese. In the middle will be Ann Revel. And then to the right of Ann, we have Johnny Camus. And then to the right will be Nora Campos. So a couple of housekeeping items. There are 2 restrooms. If you just head out into the hallway and to the right, we have 2 restrooms there. And now I'd just like to introduce our moderator for today, Pierluigi Oliverio, former San Jose City Council member. Pierluigi Oliverio is a lifelong resident of San Jose and graduate of San Jose Unified School District and San Jose State University. Go Spartans. He has a business background with 25 years in high tech and was elected 3 times to the San Jose City Council. His tenure ended due to term limits and currently volunteers as a San Jose Planning Commissioner and board member of his neighborhood association. So please welcome today's moderator, Pierluigi Oliverio.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you to the District 8 Roundtable for organizing the event, and thank you to the church for opening the space. The timekeeper in red, all the candidates should recognize the timekeeper will be keeping track. We'll start off with a 1-minute open. There'll be a series of questions where you'll have 90 seconds to respond, and then you'll finally have a 1-minute close. This format is organized by the District 8 Roundtable as well as the questions, and there is no rebuttal, as you've seen in some of the candidate forums, so just your best answer to the question above. And I'm not really clear on how we were planning to do who started first, but I think the easiest thing, maybe I'll just start on one side and then the close can go the other way, unless you had a different format. I don't. Oh, was it? You have to ask. I did not get these beforehand, and I don't see that anywhere on here. So I'm just going to ad-lib, and we'll just start with Mr. Gildersleeve for a 1-minute open, and then we'll come down this way.
Okay. My name is Tim Gildersleeve, and I'm running for Senate District 15. And what motivates me to run, and I'm very comfortable here, is I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and his teachings on serving people and loving one's neighbor as oneself is something I take very seriously on a daily basis. And whether it's in my work or volunteer work, I take that seriously. That's what motivates me to run. This position would allow me to expand that opportunity to help many more people than I do on a daily basis, whether it be at work or volunteer. Issues that I'm standing for is that housing is a human right, education is a human right, a job with a livable wage is a human right, health care is a human right. I'm taking no money. I know there's some that think that's a detriment, and I'm an independent. I've been an independent for at least over 10 years, maybe more than that, and I can go to either Republican or Democratic functions, could go to Green, or libertarian, so I'm not obligated to a party. Thank you.
Time. Yes, absolutely. Sounds good for time management. And the audience does have an opportunity to submit questions. We ask that you put them on a card. Jeremy's walking around, provide it to him. The question should go for all candidates. It shouldn't single out one candidate. So keep that in mind as you submit your questions, because if it is, it won't be asked. So we're going on to Supervisor Cortese.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be here. I don't want to go over too much in terms of background. I represented this area on the City Council, the District 8, but prior to that, served on the Eastside High School District Board of Trustees, and I had the great opportunity to start working with people firsthand in this area when we decided we needed a new high school, the first one built in 25 years, and there's several people in this room who joined together, ran a huge campaign and convinced people in a district with 187,000 voters that it was time to put a high school out here. So after that face-to-face work on the school board, when I was elected to the City Council, it was very clear to me that we needed to continue to have something that created an opportunity for people to have input. And the District 8 Community Roundtable was really an adjunct of my council office at that time, from 2001 through almost 2008. And realizing that I was going to move on, I've been elected to the Board of Supervisors, we asked the roundtable to form bylaws and elections and take over on its own. So it's very gratifying to me to see a lot of the community leaders still involved, to see the roundtable still doing this kind of work, and I look forward to answering the questions. Thank you.
Ann Revel.
Here, it's really important for you to be civically engaged, and I appreciate that you're here. I've been in public service my entire career. I started at the county, ended up at the county council's office. I was there for 31 years and saw my obligation is to serve the public. And that's what I did when I then was asked by President Obama to go to the Justice Department, and then later he asked me to be the chair of the Federal Election Commission, where I was Senate confirmed. But in every one of those jobs, including I was also appointed by Jerry Brown as the head of the Fair Political Practices Commission, every one of those jobs, my guiding principle was doing what was right for the people that I was representing. And that's what's important for you, because I know government, I know how to get things done, and I'll do that for you. Thank you.
Councilmember Camus.
Good afternoon. My name is Johnny Camus. I'm sorry. Wow, didn't know how long this was. I'm an immigrant. Many of you may know my story. I came here from Beirut, Lebanon, and during a time of war, I learned how to speak English at the age of 8. And me and my family are living the American dream. I became a financial advisor and worked for 19 years, built my own business. And then when I saw the city's finances in peril, back, I don't know if you guys remember, we were closing libraries, laying off police officers, not fixing our roads. I decided to throw my hat in the race and see how we could save money. You know, most politicians want to get to somewhere to spend money. In my tenure, I have been the voice of fiscal responsibility at the city level, saving millions of dollars, making sure that our taxes go where they're supposed to go. And I don't know how many of you are happy with the state of the state and how they spend their money, but that's what's motivating me to run. I want to make sure that we're not just asking for your tax money, but we're getting results. And that's what happened. Okay, thank you.
Assemblymember Campos.
Thank you. My name is Nora Campos, and I am very honored to be here before all of you. I served on the city council for 10 years. I won that race in a special election and had the opportunity to serve 2 full years. Then I went to the state assembly, where I served all of you there for 6 years. And with your leadership and your involvement, we tackled many things, whether it was K through 12 education. We also tackled making sure that we addressed the infrastructure that we needed to for our college and our universities. We also worked on other issues that pertain to bringing resources back home, which was public safety. I had the opportunity to chair the Public Safety Committee where we were able to bring resources down back home, and I hope to be able to continue to do that to serve you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you for the open. We'll start off with Dave. And what do you see as one creative solution to build more affordable housing across the entire state to help solve the current housing crisis?
Bell's bill, which was not signed into law last session, it sounds like he's bringing that back again this session, SB 5, which would create a state finance agency that would create the financial incentives to get housing production back going again, including affordable housing, is absolutely critical. As we know, tethered to that issue is the homeless issue. I co-chaired the 2016 Measure A bond here in our community, which was supported by the voters by 2/3, which has now provided $700 million for extremely low-income housing and $950 million total. So there's a lot of that money that's going to affordable housing in general, and then extremely low-income housing, where we have financed 21 projects thus far. Those ideas, those kinds of mechanisms need to be enacted, replicated to the extent that we've innovated here. There's no reason to leave the other 57 counties out of the effort, the kind of efforts that we have created here to deal with those issues. On a regional level, we have supported something called Assembly Bill 1487, which for the Bay Area alone creates a financing agency, again, that will create economic incentives for builders to build the right kind of housing in the right places. Thank you.
I also agree that Senator Bell's bill, which has tax increment financing, which means we're not going to have another sales tax. We're not going to have more taxes on you. It will be a way of getting some of the increase of the taxes that can help pay for affordable housing that we need so desperately, not just for the very low income, and teachers and firefighters, but also homeless housing, which is so essential for those people to be off the streets and to make the rest of the community safe. I also think, and I know you asked for one solution, but I also think I worked at the state government. I ran an agency. I saw that too often money is being spent, given to those agencies, and not being spent for the purposes intended, and no one is going back to look at it, to really analyze and audit those agencies to determine whether, one, if it's needed, but also, if it's not still needed, how about bringing it back to the state and using it for those purposes that we have urgent needs, like homelessness, homeless housing, transportation, and housing, affordable housing for everybody. And there are many other needs that we have, and I'm sure we'll talk about them, but having those big budgets really needs oversight, and the Senate has failed to do that.
Well, I think you took those words right out of my mouth. I have been advocating for reducing regulation and reducing fees, and I think that's the quickest way to bring in more housing. An experiment happened here at the City of San Jose on something called ADUs. Most of you know them as granny units, or auxiliary dwelling units is what they're really called. And what we've done over the last 4 years is reduce regulations, lot sizes, what they have to look like, blah, 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 or, actual sizes. And recently we reduced the fees. So what happened? 5 years ago, we only had 5 permits for ADUs. Right now we have 780 permits for ADUs. That's the best way and the fastest way. We need to look at regulation and fees and reduce them. Because everybody else keeps talking about increasing fees. We need to look for ways to reduce fees and make it easier to build housing wherever we can. It's worked here, it's gonna work. It's just simple economics. And the more that we have, the more that the prices will drop, and the more that people will be able to afford their rents. But unfortunately, a lot of people think that adding new taxes or adding new fees will help bring housing prices lower. That never works. And I've been an advocate to reduce fees and taxes as a way to solve our problem.
So as an elected for the past 16 years in my life, starting off on the local level and then having the opportunity to serve in the assembly, what I've learned is that we can continue to raise revenues for housing, but we also have to look at policies that prevent housing from being built right here in our city. And one of the things that we need to reevaluate is why we have so many lawsuits around CEQA when it comes to building affordable housing in our communities. CEQA was intended to protect our resources, to protect other things, but it wasn't made to be used as a tool to stop housing and affordable housing in our cities. One of the things that I think is showing, we're using as a good pilot program is that the city of San Jose has been able to adopt AB 2176, which now they're building tiny homes, which are mobile, in the Mayberry area, and the mayor has taken a great lead along with the council members, and one of them happens to be here in the forum. And the policies around there have given local government the ability to be able to figure out what they need to do to move policy forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to answer what I think would be the quickest way would be to make it profitable and lucrative, highly profitable and lucrative for the developers, but that's not what I would like to do because I believe housing is a human right, and that if you do it that way, you're going to have a lot more people out in the streets, you're going to have a lot more people that can't afford the housing. So I like the prototype of the bond measure that was done in here in Santa Clara County. We could do more of these statewide. I am actually in favor of taxation because we can help, as I view it as a community, as us as a community, pooling our money together to help our neighbors. Remember the principle of love your neighbor as yourself. So I would say bond measures and taxation, but if you really want it to be quick and fast, you could make it profitable and lucrative, but you're going to hurt a lot of people by doing that. Thank you.
Okay, next question starting with Anne. What is one specific thing you would push for climate change to, lessen climate change? One specific thing.
A major problem that we have with regard to climate change is the automobiles and their emissions, trucks that are on the road and emissions, and even rail and other emissions. So we have to move towards electrification. We must. And one of the problems with electrification, we know, is that there aren't batteries that are big enough to be able to maintain also some of the solar and some of the water and other ways of electric wind. And so I believe that something that would really help both low-income communities that are impacted terribly by fracking and by other environmental devastation, those individuals could be trained to work, and we could invest in companies that would work on much better bigger batteries and other environmental solutions. And that, I think, will deal with both problems, both what I see as environmental justice issues as well as helping us with our climate change problem.
You know, we've done a lot in the city of San Jose, including community choice energy and more, and we're investing in electrification and many other things. But one of the things that I've submitted is the mower and blower lawn equipment, gasoline-powered lawn equipment buyback. So basically, you turn in your old, really polluting gas-powered mower and blowers, and you trade them in for an electric, non-polluting ones. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've done the research. Those mower and blowers actually pollute the air more than an 8-cylinder car. And so it's important to get those off the road or get those off get those out of our use as soon as possible. I have many other ideas on this issue, including making sure that we recycle here instead of shipping our recycled plastics all the way across the earth, and then who knows what happens to it there. If we really want to start recycling, if we really want to help the environment, let's recycle here. Make sure that we take care of our own waste instead of wasting billions of dollars in gas and pollution just shipping our garbage across the seas and having no guarantees that they'll actually be recycled in a proper manner?
We know that one super tanker is equivalent to 50 million cars, their emissions. So we need to be bold and start looking at how we address that. The other thing that I think we need to do is that we know that when we give individuals for buying a Prius a credit or a tax credit, we know that most individuals that are able to buy electric cars, brand new, they have the shortest commuting distance, and they live in some of the highest zip codes. So I think what we need to do is we need to be able to address that issue. So when we have individuals that work here, but they're commuting 2 to 3 hours to come into San Jose or Silicon Valley to work, those are the individuals that we actually should be giving credits or a tax break to be able to buy a Prius or a used car, electric car, so that they can be able to commute in the city of San Jose or Silicon Valley. So those are just a couple of the things that I would move forward on addressing, and we really need to be able to have bold leadership to address those issues.
Okay, there's a myriad of ways, but since we're focusing on one, I think as Nora mentioned that we want to I'd like to see electric vehicles, which we're moving in the direction of get more electric vehicles on the road, get the gas-powered vehicles off, and also, as mentioned, subsidies to low-income people so that they can buy electric vehicles. They're very expensive, and you have to be wealthy to get a Tesla right now. Also, I'm in favor of public transportation. I don't use it myself because it's inconvenient. We have to make it convenient. We're not doing very well with public transportation in this area as regards to the buses. So I think we need to move in a direction of getting people off the road and into buses, onto light rail, onto the trains. That's going to take a lot of work, and that means some reformation in the public transportation system. The way it's going right now, that it isn't going to happen. So that's what I think we have to do. Thank you.
So when I got over to the Board of Supervisors in late 2008, moving over from City Council, but I'll speak up. The county didn't have any environmental stewardship goals at all. And since that time, we've worked so hard at it, and particularly my former colleague Supervisor Yeager and I put together the county's first environmental goals, a complete list of things that the county needed to do, including solar farms, et cetera. We are now at 100% renewable as a government. We are the second largest public entity store of solar power in the country. So these things can be done. The one thing that is the biggest, and that it should be done up and down the state, to answer your question, is we call it community choice aggregation. You have it here now. The county and the 14 cities that are not San Jose were the first to do this. The state will allow local governments to form clean energy utilities, essentially, that purchase clean energy, deliver it to you on your PG&E bill, and unless you opt out, that's what you get. Sounds simple, but not all 58 counties are doing that in the state of California. Here, that's happening, and I don't think there's any single thing you could do that's any bigger than getting ordinary consumers like all of us on clean power as quickly as possible.
Okay, next question. Modification of Prop 13 is on the ballot statewide to remove commercial properties from Prop 13 protection. That'll be on the ballot. Do you support, yes or no? And if so, why so?
I have been a solid no on this issue from day one. I could tell you why, too, because how many of you guys think that corporations will pay these new taxes? Okay, so none of your hands are gone up. Corporations won't pay these taxes. You will, and here's how. You know, the shopping centers will actually, the retail spaces, they have something called triple net. So as soon as we raise the prices on the shopping center owners, they're gonna raise the prices on mom and pop dry cleaners and the Subway sandwiches and everything that you actually eat and participate in every day. And if those people don't raise their prices, then they're going to go out of business. So you're going to hurt two people, yourselves and the small business owners. Big businesses, I don't really much care about, but it will hurt all the small business owners. And by the way, we had a $22 billion surplus this year. Why are we still raising taxes?
Hold your applause, please.
I've been very consistent on Prop 13. I said that I would support it if it had exemptions for making sure that our small business owners were exempt. And I do mean small business owners because there are business owners that also own the property that they're able to have their business out of. And if we start taxing them and making them part of Prop 13, then we're going down an avenue where we're now hurting our small mom and pop businesses. So I've been very clear about that, and that has been my position. Thank you.
Okay, I was against the old Proposition 13, but I wasn't old enough to vote on it, so I would have voted no on that. And I also know that the county assessor voted no on that as well, but he's not for the new Proposition 13. And I am in favor of the new Proposition 13 because the damage that has been done by Proposition 13 to the schools and our public entities has been horrendous. Our school systems we have one of the worst school systems, K through 12 in the nation. And so I'm for it. As Nora mentioned, I'm concerned about small businesses being affected. I was a small business manager. I managed a restaurant at night many years ago for 10 years. So that is my concern. I think those issues could be addressed in the legislatively. We could do that and counterbalance any bad effects to small businesses a yes on Proposition 13 would have. Thank you.
Yeah, there's nothing out there that's suggesting that Proposition 13 should be reversed in any way in terms of residential property owners, homeowners like some of us, et cetera. That's not what's on the table. In case you're hearing a fear kind of politics coming up about, heck no, we don't want to reverse Prop 13. It's there to protect us. But it's also protecting folks like the 20 driving industries here in Santa Clara County. It's protecting the Apple campuses, it's protecting the eBay campuses, it's protecting folks. Some of them are providing good jobs for a lot of us, but they've been there for a long time. They're going to be there a long time further without reassessment. We're raking in billions of dollars of corporate profits at a time when we're 41st in per pupil spending. So what educators in the state are saying is, why are we giving them a free ride like we would for an elderly couple on fixed income when they're bringing in massive amounts of corporate profits? Why shouldn't they be reassessed once in a while to a true property value instead of the property value from 20 years ago when they built the campus? I think that's reasonable. And the suggestion that we would spend down our $22 billion surplus to cure that problem of being 41st in per pupil spending is kind of absurd. I think that's what got Gray Davis recalled, taking our surplus, getting rid of it, and then the next year you get a downturn and you got no savings account. How many of you would spend your savings account for ongoing expenses to educate your kids year in and year out from the time they enter kindergarten? That's what's being suggested here. The surplus is there to protect us from a downturn.
The problem with some of these proposals that are put on the ballot, like the new Prop 13 one, and also the problem with a lot of the legislation in Sacramento is nobody is thinking clearly about what the consequences are and how it's going to be come to fruition, how it's going to be enacted. And that's true, I believe, in the Prop 13 discussion. And I myself, I was a county employee at the time that it was passed, and no one thought it was intended to cover businesses. But it does cover businesses now. And I have had conversations, because that's how I like to do things, is actually inform myself about consequences. Larry Stone, the county assessor, the assessor in Alameda County, and I have talked about this issue, and they say very clearly, number one, that we know that the money doesn't just go to schools. The money from the taxes is spread much more broadly. So this is not a school issue. And secondarily, they cannot implement it. It cannot be implemented the way it's written on the ballot measure. And so they say that the only way that it would ever be implemented, it would be another maybe 5 to 10 years. So to have this kind of a solution to the problem of what we need to do to get businesses to step up, I think is mistaken, and there's other ways that we can accomplish the same thing.
Time. Okay, and just we're starting with Nora in case the order. This one's on everyone's favorite subject, PG&E. Do you support restructuring PG&E, and if so, a public entity, or what are your viewpoints on this?
Thank you for that question. When I was on the city council, we had the explosions from the San Bruno. And I remember pulling the city manager in and saying, I need to understand, are there lines in the city of San Jose, and where are they? And so they did, and they pulled out the map, and we looked, and they ran right through the district that I was representing in a very high thoroughfare. And then when I got to Sacramento, I sat on resources and transportation. And I was one of 5 individuals that sat on that committee. And PG&E came and they reported to us. And we had an opportunity to review an audit that the state had done on PG&E. And it was very clear in that report that the culture in PG&E needed to be changed. And I was one of 5 that actually took them to task and made recommendations for us to actually make sure that we could remove the current leadership in there. But because the California PUC, Public Utilities Commissions, are the ones that have the ability to do that, we were left without that. So I had proposed that we actually made them report to the legislature, and that did not move forward.
I'm sensitive to the fact that this is an area that has a really direct impact to power shutdowns. So we actually had a shutdown where I work over at East Ridge Paratransit, and wasn't good. First of all, you may not like this. I think we need to be a little bit more flexible with them. What I would like to see is a series of guidelines that they have to achieve before we're going to break them up. Because if they don't achieve a series of guidelines that are set out by the state, that they have to fix these certain things by a certain time, then I would favor breaking them up into smaller entities. I'm not so sure that a state-controlled utility would work. It might make it worse. But maybe breaking it up, if they can't achieve the goals that we lay out for them, might be something that would light a fire under them to get these issues fixed. So that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
It's just a few weeks ago when Mayor Liccardo suggested that maybe it shouldn't be PG&E and maybe it shouldn't be the state, maybe it should be a public benefit corporation or some kind of public entity that we own that is running what we now call PG&E, our utility. I signed on. I think it was the first supervisor from this area to sign on to a letter that he began to circulate. I don't know if that's the perfect answer, but I know that doing nothing is not the answer. PG&E, it is clear, is broken. It is broken from a management standpoint. It's disconnected up and down its management tree. We talk to middle managers as county supervisors on big issues facing our county that say one thing. We talk to folks above their head who don't know what the middle manager said or what they stand for. So it's no wonder we're having the kind of problems that we have. It's no wonder we have chaos with blackouts and nobody knows why it's this area or why it's that area or why it's not even evidently in a wildfire area when it happens for that reason. The second thing that needs to be done is the PUC needs to be gutted. And I think listening to that story we just heard from Nora, I would have suggested at that point and immediately a bill that would have completely made over the PUC. It's corrupt. There's no way that you can assign any appropriate accountability to a Public Utilities Commission that allows this to happen. And that oversight mechanism, it's no good anymore. So that's what you can expect from me as a state senator.
So we know that PG&E for San Bruno is actually in criminal court, and the court has determined that they spent all kinds of money on bonuses and to cut the money that was intended to cut trees and to make it safer for the people of the state. PG&E needs greater oversight. It is impossible for the state or cities banded together to be able to oversee together all of the lines, all of the power poles that PG&E has in mountainous areas throughout the state of California. What we need is greater oversight. And the problem, yes, has been the PUC, but more importantly, the problem has been the state legislature, the governor. They have failed to make sure that the PUC was doing the job that they were intended to do, which was to make sure that they were doing the work for the people of the state and not for the benefit solely of their shareholders. And that's what we need to do. We need to have a state senate that is far more involved in oversight and much less willing to accede to others and not look at what's happening in this state. And that's what has to happen with PG&E.
So I agree with some of these comments. It takes two to tango, and it was PG&E and the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, who have failed miserably. And the oversight is clearly on the PUC. Now, I don't like monopolies, but we're stuck. And it doesn't matter what solution we tell you about today. I could tell you this. Whatever happens, it's going to cost us a lot more because PG&E never invested in the upgrades that they were supposed to be investing in to make our electricity grid safer and smaller so that we can have less blackouts. Regardless of what happens, I think our rates are going to go up, but for me, it's about accountability. Making sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and making sure that government is responsive. Now, as a state legislator, I would make sure that whatever form of this new, it doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be a monopoly, has accountability in it. If we say you can raise your rate by 2%, that if you want to upgrade this grid, we need to make sure that increase was used for that purpose. And that's what my tenure at City Council has been all about, making sure your money is going to the right places.
Okay. I'm going to combine this two questions because they're really one and they're very general. So in light of people are fleeing the state in record numbers, what are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Okay, I think the constituents of this vast District 15 would probably like to focus on education, housing, and transportation. And of course, housing is a big reason why it's happening. So that is going to be the number one reason. I think any one of us are going to say that's the number one reason, number one issue we're going to address. Now, as I've said, housing is a human right. That's my position on that. I want to state that I'm a renter, by the way, and many of you have young adult children that are only going to be able to rent. So I was in favor of Proposition 10, which was not popular in the state. I think people were misled on what that was. It was not about rent control. It was simply giving the power to the local municipalities to set rents for the needs of the people. I was in favor of that. I don't view that as a permanent solution, but we have to control rents so we don't have some of our young adults fleeing. Some of you have young adults that are not going to be able to stay here because they can't afford how much it's going to cost, and they're not going to be able to get into a house right away. So that's one solution. The second solution is we may need to change the rules on housing ownership. I watch some of these, I don't even like the word flipping. I hear that word and I think, I don't even know if that was the intention of what the American dream of owning a house was about. So I think we kind of have to look at some of the rules for housing in the state. Thank you.
Well, I think Tim's right about one thing is that housing is, and the cost of housing is the number one issue. Clearly that's going to drive people away. Clearly that's driven a couple people, young people in my family, out of the area. And I think when these issues that we're talking about all afternoon here start to impact families, I think families start voting differently. And I'm hoping that you're going to support me because of my background in addressing this issue, my understanding in terms of this issue. And as I said, housing and homelessness are tethered together very closely. The second thing that I think people are extremely focused on is public safety. You know, I've been here, as most of you know, basically my entire life. Aside from being born in the Fort Ord Army Hospital, I ended up right here in Evergreen, and I've lived here. I love this place. But when you knock on doors, when you talk to people and they say it's not the same anymore, the police from SJPD don't show up when there's packages stolen from our door. We don't get responses like we used to. We don't have as many police officers as we used to. These are issues that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed up and down the state. Those are two of the primary issues. I talked about environment earlier, and I talked about education earlier. All of those things are issues that are either going to retain people here
Time.
or not.
I too have been around this entire district talking to people, and the things that I hear from people, and also let me just say, my own son had to leave the area because even with me helping support him and his wife and my adorable grandchildren, they couldn't live here. So I'm personally affected by this. And a lot of what people say, though, yes, it's housing costs. Housing costs are ridiculously high. Rents are ridiculously high. It's hard for young people to live here. People are also really upset about the horrible gridlock that we have in our traffic. I mean, there was even gridlock coming here from my house, and I'm sure you see it all the time, and how difficult it is if you want to work in a place like Mountain View or wherever it is, and coming through our transportation system that is so terrible. So all of those things lead to economic disparity in this area. People are so clearly unable to live here and have the quality of life that I had when I was growing up in Santa Clara County, in a very lower middle class family, but it was still a great place to grow up. They can't have it, and we need to deal with those issues.
Well, I think one of the reasons why people are leaving the state is it's become a one-party state. There's no other ideas being presented at the state level. It's just the same ideas trying to address the problems. Now, I concur that there's the housing crisis, there's the criminal aspects. Many of these problems have been plaguing us for years, but there's no new ideas. I've been talking about, for example, on crime, that the pendulum of justice has swung too far to the side of the criminal. Our police, when they catch the criminals that Dave's talking about, there's no way to prosecute them. If they steal something under $950, it's a misdemeanor. And there's no way to add the misdemeanors to turn it into a felony, which it used to be. A lot of the laws have turned against the law-abiding citizens. And a lot of ideas need to change at the state level. And I will be that change. I'm one of the only people talking about this justice topic, because it's, stealing off your porch it's just become so easy and with no penalty that our police officers don't want to address it, because they know that as soon as it goes to the district attorney's office, nothing's going to get done, okay? Even though our police force is growing.
I think we'll all have similar issues. We know that the homeless issue is a big issue. We know that housing is a big issue, and we know that transportation. And I think the issues that I'm going to focus on, my top priorities will be housing. We need to build a system here where we can build housing next to job centers. We need to build a transportation system that really allows us to get out of our cars. The Evergreen community is so far from the job centers that it makes it very, very long for you to get to work. So pushing and figuring out how we work with our local electeds, with the state, to make sure that we complete our transit systems in the city of San Jose as well as Santa Clara. Those will be my focus areas that I will continue to move forward. And the other thing that I think is also crucial, as I talk to family members and friends and as I'm sitting in coffee shops, the number one thing that comes up within our communities, besides housing and transportation, is public safety. Public safety. If you're not safe in your neighborhood, then you don't feel that your city is safe. And then you worry about your kids. I mean, I have a school-age child, and I take him to school. My mom picks him up. My husband takes him. My mom picks him up because we're nervous about him being able to go on his own. Those are my priorities.
Time.
Thank you.
Okay, in order to fit some questions from the public, I'd recommend we switch to 60-second response. And I believe this will start with Dave. Dave, what's your position on universal daycare for low-income families in California?
I support it. It's something that we've advanced and continue to fight to advance here in the county. I think you're going to have the opportunity soon, at least in this county, to vote to support universal daycare here in Santa Clara County. But again, these are things where we've been innovating, not replicating here in the county. We've been leading, not following. And I think that's what we need at the state of in the state of California. If you want to have universal, if you believe in it, if you want to have it in all 58 counties in California, then you need to send people to the state Senate who've worked on the issue, who know how to implement the issue, and believe that it's necessary. And that's what I'll be for you as your state senator.
So I know a lot about the daycare issue because my daughter has a 1-year-old and she works for the county of Santa Clara. And when I had her 32 years ago, there was no daycare there, and there is no daycare there today. But I firmly believe that this is an issue that holds women and families back. It's one of the things that causes economic disparity as well in this area, and we absolutely must have universal, affordable daycare that's quality daycare, not just any daycare. And that will be the only way that people will be able to get ahead in our community.
Well, I support daycare in general. We've actually supported daycare for low-income families in the city of San Jose at some of our libraries. I have to know, the devil's always in the details, where the money is coming from, and is it a sustainable model? So before I answer that I'm going to be for it, I want to know where, a lot more details as to how we're going to fund it and how long are we going to be able to sustain it with that funding model. So I hope that you'll accept that as an answer.
Absolutely, I'm supportive of universal daycare. On the city council, I worked to make sure that in our underserved communities that we were able to bring the resources that we needed right there in the community at the facilities that were right there in the neighborhoods. In the assembly, I worked by passing bills that made sure, and this was just moving forward, that anyone that was from a low-income family or in foster care, that they were able to go into programs and also be able to have first right to be in an after-school program. Because when we have our underserved communities that don't have the ability to pay for the expensive resources out there, then we're creating the haves and the have-nots, and that is not what we're known about here in Silicon Valley. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I'm in favor of it. It is a necessity. And as an example, we have many of our female drivers at work that sometimes can't even show up because they have nobody to take care of their kids, and that affects our service to the poor, elderly, and disabled community, as it does in other jobs. Another aspect that isn't mentioned here is the workers. The workers are going to have to be higher paid in the daycare system. It's the same situation as with teachers. If you don't pay them enough, they're not going to be able to afford to pay their rent, their housing, their other bills. So we have to make sure not only that it's supplied to everyone, and I think it should be done in a progressive way, wealthy on down to low income, rather than a flat scale. And we have to make sure that the workers are paid a livable wage so that they will stay at the jobs and can stay in this area. Thank you.
Okay, starting with Ann. How do we solve the unfunded liabilities of the California public employee retirement programs? And looking quickly on the internet, it's at least $130 billion.
Yeah. Well, that's almost an unsolvable problem. But I know that there's been money set aside now to try to pay off a little bit at a time, and Governor Newsom did that in his recent budget. And that's really what we need to do, is for the unfunded liability that is already out there, I think it needs to be solved in that fashion. With regard to future needs that we might have for future employees, it is absolutely necessary for the state and local governments as well to start looking at whether or not they can afford to pay for those costs for the retirement benefits. And I do believe that when people get those jobs, that they're entitled to get what they bargained for, but they need to look forward.
I'm not sure what that one's for. That's for something else.
Already? You're going to give me the hook.
No, not at all. Continuing on,
Just
Johnny.
kidding.
So this is a huge problem in the city of San Jose still. I could tell you that I came in a time where there was a lot of turmoil over this issue, and I hope I didn't run out of time yet. But in the city of San Jose, we created a second-tier pension system through Measure F that I supported. This is what we hope will be an affordable model, and I think what we need to start looking at this affordable model statewide. Now, it's not going to help us with our tier 1 employees. It just isn't, because we can't take away our obligations to those employees, but we have to start thinking about what got us into these places. It's because people weren't watching the till. People who were in charge made decisions to give people backdated pensions, to city at the city council level and at the state level back in Gray Davis's days. It's because nobody was paying attention. I will pay attention.
When I was on the city council, and I'm thinking about, this was before Councilmember Johnny Camus was there, we started looking at this issue and the 2-tier and the 3-tier, and we went back and forth to figure out what would be fair, because you can't take away what the employees already have, but how we were going to move forward with the future, we were going to address that. And I think that, as he stated earlier, they're moving in that direction. Is that model the best model? That's to be determined. And I think as we move forward, that if at the state level, if we have to dip into some of our savings to address this issue, then that's where we should go. Time is pretty fast with 60 seconds. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question so I make sure I heard it correctly?
How do we solve the unfunded liabilities of the California Public Employee Retirement Program?
First of all, I won't solve it by having it be put on a ballot to be decided by the voters. That's absolutely unacceptable. So that's one way I'm not going to propose solving it, letting the voters legislate what should be happening in a collective bargaining agreement between workers and employers. Absolutely no way am I going to support anything that goes on the ballot to do this. We have a little bit of a surplus, which we actually don't have because we have huge pension liabilities in California. I think we should probably start to consider any extra money that we get to going into paying down the pensions. I'm very pro-worker. I'm pro-union. I don't want to lessen the workers' right to having enough money for their retirement. So I'm not in favor of getting rid of the current system, but I think any extra money we get should go to paying down the pension. Thank you.
Well, I think what you need to do is a lot of things that we've done in Santa Clara County, you have to negotiate with employees and ask them, bargain with them, to make greater contributions to their own pensions. That can happen, and that works. You need to make tough decisions, again, just like you do in a household. When I got to the county, we had unfunded pension liability, and we had to deal with that. So we made a decision that the one-time money that was coming into the county from other sources, like the dissolution of redevelopment that was paying us in chunks, that would go first to pay our unfunded liability. We prioritized it and started bringing it down in big chunks. But I think where we're headed, you heard one of the panelists talking about going to second tier. There used to be just one type of pension, then PEPRA, Public Employees Retirement Act, second tier. I think we're headed to a third tier next, so that as new employees come in, they're not receiving the same exact kind of pension benefits that people are now.
Well, the roundtable really wants to keep you here and ask you one more question. So another question from the public, and I believe on this one we would be starting with Johnny. Johnny, what's your plan on how to deal with mental illness and drug addiction among the homeless?
Well, this is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to run for state senate, because I think that the state has abandoned their responsibilities for the drug addicted and the mentally ill. We don't have any mental health facilities here that we've been promised for years after Prop 63 was passed. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it was in 2004 that they promised that the rich are going to pay to help the mentally ill. I don't know where those billions of dollars are going. I will ask for an audit to find out where the money's being spent, how it's being spent, and why are we not creating facilities for the mentally ill and the drug addiction as well. I'm in favor of some of the state laws that have been implemented already in many other counties, like Laura's law and some of the other laws that do conservatorship for the drug addicted as well.
Thank you for this question. I had mentioned that I served on public safety, and a lot of times people think public safety has to do just with law enforcement and fire services. But the reality, public safety also had to do with mental health, housing the homeless, housing individuals that may have mental issues. And one of the things that I learned by being on the budget, which is a very important committee to be on, is that we need to create a solid line item for this particular issue so that we're not negotiating every year that we go through the budget, but that we know that there is sufficient amount of money that will come down to our cities and our counties, because we have a lot of programs locally within our county and our city, and a lot of community-based organizations that are servicing our mental health population, and that's what I would continue to do. Thank you.
Okay, I have a brother that's mentally ill. He's very mentally ill, and he's in a facility funded by county taxes, which I'm very appreciative of. We have to look at this as a community solution. So and I'm going to look at this in regards to homelessness. Many of them are mentally ill. Many of them have drug and alcohol addiction. In America, and I don't know what the statistic is for California, 66 million people are addicted to alcohol. I don't know what the statistics are for drugs. So it's a crisis beyond a crisis. So in regards to the homeless and the mentally ill and the drug addicted and alcohol addicted, I would say I would like to see state-sanctioned tent encampments and transitional housing up and down the state immediately with social services available. And if people are unwilling to accept help, then we have to use a little bit of coercion to get them into these places to get help. So we're going to have to use a little bit of tough love to help those that don't want help. Thank you.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we're short of, the lack here in this county and all over the state, is mental health beds, residential facilities. Somebody has an episode here, God forbid, they'll go to perhaps a county emergency psychiatric facility. They can stay there for 24 hours, and they're supposed to be assigned to a bed. They can be held on a 5150 for days. They can be extended on a 5152 for a couple of weeks. But what good does that do if you don't have any place to put them? And that's the condition in most of the state. What we decided to do here to leverage jail construction money that we're getting from the state is we asked the state to allow us permission to take half of those jail facilities and turn them into mental health residential facilities, what we call step-down facilities. I think that's innovative again. I think that's the way to leverage money. And we're also building an under 18 facility on the VMC campus, so it's right next to our medical facilities. I think this is the kind of thinking we need at the state level as well.
And just a little point of oh, sorry, Ann, go ahead. No, I think you're next. I thought it was done. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm happy to pass. No, Johnny is right. Prop 63 money was not spent by the counties. They were hoarding it, and because Governor Newsom just said he was going to claw it back if they didn't show that they were immediately going to use the money for those beds that they don't have and for the other needs for the mentally ill. Ultimately, for the mentally ill homeless, you need to have transitional and also supportive housing as well as permanent housing ultimately. But I firmly believe LPS conservatorships need to change. That law was enacted after Agnew's was giving people lobotomies against their will. Now these people are lying in our streets and they're going to the jails and they're not getting any help, and they really need to have the ability to be stabilized in order to become functioning members of our society if that's possible. But it's not going to be possible in jail.
I was just going to say 95% of all psychiatric beds in this country have been reduced in the last 50 years. So finishing off with our 1-minute close, we're going to go reverse, so we'll start with Nora.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be able to address you this afternoon. I want to thank all of you for making this a priority as we run, because you are actually picking a new senator to represent you for the next 4 years. And I hope that you consider my leadership. I've had the opportunity to represent you for the past 6 years, from 2010 to 2016. And I hope that you will give me the opportunity to represent you for the next 4 years as your state senator, to work on housing, transportation, education, climate change, and women's issues, which is extremely important for us to continue to focus on. Those are the issues that I'm going to focus on, and that's what I bring to the table: experience, boldness, and getting things done. Thank you.
My name is Johnny Camus again, and I want to thank you for being engaged in this discussion. I am an independent. I've been a Democrat and I've been a Republican. I'm an independent now. I don't want to go up to the state to go party. I want to go and work. I want to work on issues. I want to solve issues. We can't keep throwing money at problems and expecting results. We have to create accountability. That's a word that is not being heard at the state Senate level. We need to demand results, and that's what I will do. I will work for you on results. Again, Johnny Camus would love to get your support.
Thank you all so much for being here. I too am only interested in this job because I came back from DC and saw how little our elected officials have done to deal with these issues that we're worried about the increase in homelessness, the huge increase in homelessness, gridlock in traffic, housing issues. All of those other problems are worse than ever before. And why is that? A lot of people are not devoted to you. They are not, like I am, someone whose values are just to do what the people need, not to aggrandize myself, not to get another political job, but to do the work for you. And that's exactly what I'll do. And you can go on my website. It's revelforca.com, and you can see my experience, and you can see all the people who've supported me because they say I'm a person of integrity. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your attention, your commitment today on Saturday afternoon to being here. I know so many of you, we know each other. I think you know that we're not doing things like squandering Mental Health Services Act money. In fact, there's a couple people right in the front row here who talked to me before I became a county supervisor and said, you need schooling services. You need to put that money into our schools so that our kids are getting the attention, the clinical help, and so forth that they need before they get into trouble. And you always save money dealing with your kids before they get in trouble instead of after they get in trouble. That's $40 million a year of state money that you paid for. That's where it's been going. You also know my style, how I operate, if you will, as an elected official. I created the original District 8 Community Roundtable because I believe fundamentally that it's critical for neighborhoods to be connected and those neighborhoods to be connected to their elected official and for things to happen from there. And I guarantee you, send me to Sacramento, I'm not going to disappear. I'm going to be right back here working with you as usual. Thank you very much. I need your support.
And as everyone else is saying, thank you for coming here and listening to us. It's encouraging to see this many people here. I'm going to mention one weakness, of course, is that I have not held elected office. That's something you have to consider. But I'm going to mention my strengths again. I'm independent. I've been an independent for a very long time. I go talking to people across all spectrums, whether it be politically or philosophically. I have spent a lot of time over the years with many different types of people. And I'm taking no money. That's something else you have to consider in this. I will not be held back by any moneyed interests. My interests will be strictly what the voters want. If 70% of the voters want an aggressive environmental policy, then we do it. I have nothing telling me otherwise except the 70% of the voters. I'm standing on housing as a human right, a job with a livable wage as a human right, education as a human right, and universal health care as a human right. And I want to stand up also for the poor, elderly, disabled, and the common voter. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. Let's please provide a loud round of applause. Well done.